Hey everyone, this is Jordan here at Totally Bored. Today I'm going to be going through 5 games that I love to play at 2 players. Now, some of these games support more than 2 players, but I think they fit best at 2, and without further ado, let's get straight to the list. I'm going to start the list off with an honorable mention, and this goes to Final Girl. Now, Final Girl is actually a solo-only game where you're taking on the role of a female protagonist set in her very own feature film against a variety of killers depending on which expansion box you get. Now, the reason I love playing this cooperatively is you can tag up with one of your friends who maybe likes horror stuff, or another friend who doesn't really like board games so much, but it may be interested in the theme, and you guys can work together to help this final girl succeed against a killer. And I love it because it really feels like you're watching like a tense a tense horror movie, and you're doing all of this decision making together with someone, and you're kind of just watching it unfold live. And I love that. I think it's really fun, and I feel like a lot of solo games actually play pretty good at 2 players. I've also played Under Falling Sky at 2 players, and that played really, really well too. So that's maybe a second honorable mention. But Final Girl 2 player is really fun. If you haven't tried it, give it a try. One of my favorite games to play 2 players is Spirit Island. Now, in Spirit Island, you're taking control of a very powerful spirit, each with their own asymmetric abilities and powers, and you are protecting your island from invaders who are destroying the land, causing blight throughout the land, and even killing natives. Now, this game supports up to 4 players right out of the box, and even 5 players if you have one of the expansions, but I think it really shines at 2 players because you guys can really work closely and strategize and determine how your spirits really synergize, and it makes for these really fun turns that don't really overstay their welcome. And like I said, this supports up to 4 players, but I feel like once you get past 2 players, it tends to slow down and get bogged down just a little bit. It gets a little convoluted because the game is intense. If you've never played it, it is a very heavy game, and really the rules aren't too complicated, but there is so much decision space for the players or the spirits that it can cause the turns to be very long and very thinky. But I think at 2 players it is a sweet spot for this game. It really shines, and if you've never played Spirit Island, I 100% recommend it. This game has insane replayability. There are so many combinations of spirits you can do, really endless supply or endless combinations of spirits, and the game is hard. This game is no joke. So if you want a challenge, if you want a game that is just very thematic, very fun, very thinky, Spirit Island is incredible, and it plays very, very well at 2 players. Next up, we have Patchwork by Uwe Rosenberg. Now, this is a 2-player only versus game where you are trying to create the most beautiful quilt and have the most buttons at the end of the game. And this is the epitome of chill. I mean, this game is a game that you could play in the morning, have a cup of coffee, play against your partner, your roommate, whoever, and have a really fun, chill time. Now, you're going to be selecting a variety of polyomino tiles from the center of the play area, and they're all kinds of different shapes, and you'll be placing them on your playboard one by one. And so throughout the course of the game, you have this really relaxing, fun, Tetris-like experience, and it is absolutely perfect at 2 players. It is one of my favorites. If you've never played it, play it right now, or I'm gonna come find you and I'm gonna. If you're looking to kick ass and take names, then I recommend Marvel Champions at 2 players. In this game, you are behind the mask of your favorite superhero, performing actions and thematic abilities, trying to take down popular villains like Rhino, Claw, and Ultron. Now, this game does support up to 4 players, but I feel like anything past 2 just drags way too long and just too much downtime. I don't really like it. But at 2 players, this game is absolutely incredible. You are going to be discovering synergies and figuring out how each of your superheroes can interact with each other. You're going to be defending and protecting each other, as well as trying to take down minions in the meantime, all while trying to prevent the villain's scheme from succeeding. So you have a lot of different elements that you're juggling, and it just works so well at 2 players. This is a game that is just so good, especially if you're a fan of Marvel. Buy this game right now. Go on Amazon or go to your local store, buy it, tell them I sent you, and if they have any problems with it, give them my phone number. But on a real note, this game is really thematic, really fun. I feel like it does not overstay its welcome at all at 2 players. It feels just right, and you should definitely try it if you have never played it. Another fantastic game to play at 2 players is Star Wars X-Wing. Now, in this game, you'll be taking control of either an X-Wing or 2 TIE fighters if you have the core set, and you will be facing off in a dogfight trying to be the last man standing. In order to move your ships, you will be selecting a random movement from a movement dial, and during one of the phases, you will reveal those to each other and then move your ships depending on what movement you selected. So you have this element of surprise because you don't know what your opponent is going to be playing, and you really have to just figure it out on the fly, and I love that tension that it creates. You're also going to be attacking with dice, which creates somewhat of a luck factor, but I think it actually has a lot of mitigation, so you can use these dice to your advantage kind of regardless of what happens. You have both defensive opportunities as well as offensive opportunities as well as maneuvers. So really the possibilities are endless with this game. Even with just the core set, I have had such a good time with it. And if you want to go down that slippery slope, you can also buy so many different kinds of ships and expand your army and then face off and have this giant war. It is awesome. I love this game. Even if you're not a fan of Star Wars, it's really fun. But if you're a fan of Star Wars, 150% recommend this game. It is amazing. Last but not least, we have one of my favorite games of all time. This is Ark Nova. In Ark Nova, you'll be working to create the best zoo, and you'll be doing this a number of ways. You'll be adding animals to your zoo to increase the appeal, you'll be working on conservation efforts, and you'll be performing different actions to increase the reputation that your zoo has. Now this game does support up to 4 players. I did recently play a 4-player game and it took way too long, but I feel like the 2-player count is the sweet spot. I love this game because it is so deep and there are so many different mechanisms that you have to juggle throughout the game. You have the 5 core action selection cards that each have their own strength depending on what order they're in on the board, but you also have tile placement as far as the enclosures for the animals. You have worker placement on the association board, which is going to allow you to work on things like conservation points. Then you also have the tableau, which has a lot of different synergies that you're working to build up, kind of similar to Terraforming Mars if you've ever played that. Be aware that this game is not easy. I mean, this is a challenging Euro-style game. Your brain's probably gonna be hurting a little bit after you play it, especially the first time. But if you are willing to put in the effort to learn this, it has, for me, been one of the most fun competitive gaming experiences that I've had in all of board games. If you do have Board Game Arena, I recommend you go on there and check it out, especially if you don't want to commit to buying it first. Right now, the game sits at around 9,000 to 10,000 concurrent games happening at once, which is wild. So fully recommend it, and Ark Nova is my #1 pick. And that wraps up my top 5 games to play at 2 players. If you guys have played any of these, let me know what you think about them in the comments below. And if you have a recommendation for me for a game that plays great at 2 players, let me know. This is Jordan here at Totally Bored. Have a wonderful day.